that many people usually ask is the sources of the oil for the United States. A lot of times we hear about foreign oil. I think that is common in the media to hear about that. But if you look at basically, as of 2011, of what the United States consumed of oil, 39% was from domestic sources. And our largest import from a single country was Canada, which produced 15% of the crude oil in which we consumed, followed by Mexico and Saudi Arabia, and then you can see some of the other ones as well. But it goes, it's an important fact to see that we produce quite a bit of our own, but not to mention the fact that there are, it's not all coming from the Middle East, so that has a profound effect on pricing because the world demand market is very tight. But this is just kind of contextualizes our understanding of the United States oil market.
From the 19% other, how much of that is Middle East?
Well, the biggest other ones that would have kind of a significant one, like I think Iraq would be about 4%, Qatar, Kuwait, Yemen, and if we kind of have some North Africa, that would probably account for, I would say, probably 9 percentage points of that. Then a lot of that's coming from other South American countries. Ecuador has a considerable amount. Angola has a considerable amount, so other parts of Africa. So it's an interesting concept when you kind of actually look at the numbers, because I think there's a lot of rhetoric that gets out there about where oil comes from. But this is what I found very interesting as we were looking here, and this is something that has become a new phenomenon, or at least a growing one, and it has tremendous impact in the last few years, is that though the United States has been a very large importer of crude oil, it has been an exporter of motor gasoline. And in the last few years has surged in its exports of motor gasoline, going to near half a million barrels a day in motor gasoline exports. And that is pretty profound when you think, we import all this oil and our reliance on foreign oil, again, kind of as a tagline in the media, looking particularly at this kind of new trajectory that we've seen established since kind of the '08 downturn. A significant portion of our gasoline has been exported. I mean, not significant in terms of how much we consume per se, but certainly it is a considerable amount has been exported. And it goes to maybe thinking, okay, well, who are we exporting to? About 58% of our exports of motor gasoline goes to Mexico. 5% goes to Ecuador, 5% goes to Brazil, 4% goes to Guatemala, and then 3% goes to Canada. So it's pretty localized. There are some other places that it goes as well, but that, again, there's a lot of small amounts that kind of conglomerate to make up the balance.
What would that be primarily? Because we're exporting it back to the same countries we imported crude oil from, Mexico, Ecuador, et cetera. Is that because our refining capabilities are so much superior to those importing oil countries, or?
Well, it's actually interesting because what has happened in terms of the refining industry is that the amount of which we have refined in terms of motor gasoline, that has been continuing to increase, the quantity that we refine. It has not slowed, per se. We have been refining at a consistently increasing level, though our consumption has been decreasing. And so with that, as basically with one increasing and our consumption decreasing, that balance has been basically been abroad. And
that's an absolute number?
Mm-hmm. Well, for example, so in finished motor gasoline, our highest, basically in 2007, we were consuming 3.39 billion barrels a year in finished motor gasoline. In 2011, that was 3.19 billion barrels. So that's about 200 million barrels less than we were 4 years ago. So we're consuming less, though it's kind of interesting, conversely, in 2007, we were producing about 3 billion barrels of gasoline every year, refining it. Now we're producing 3.3 billion barrels a year. So we're producing more, but we are not consuming as much. So, and so again, and that's a lot of that is we're exporting. So the United States has become a fuel exporter, and but a crude importer still. I mean, it's still obviously right. So yeah, we kind of had a comment here at the office that said basically, well, we have the refining capacity. So a lot of the rhetoric out there that says we haven't built a refinery in so long, and we need to build more refineries. But it seems that we have ample refining capability, and I would certainly appear statistically looking at the data. Absolutely, we have the capacity, and certainly be something that benefits us in the petrochemical realm, which we really haven't experienced something that is significant. Now, a big part of this is the decline in our own consumption, which has been in large part due to our economic decline. And with higher unemployment, people aren't as driving as much. A lot of factors go into that. So that has kind of allowed for that surplus quantity to be put forth onto the open market.
I think a great exercise is just see how much it is due to economic reasons and what kind of efficiencies are actually been out there for the last 4 or 5 years implemented by whether it be auto use or incentives to carpool or whatever it might be, just so that you could drill down to just see exactly what kind of player the U.S. is now. I mean, you've become more than just a consumer of hydrocarbons.
Right. I think that in 2005 was when the United States consumed its most oil annually, which was at 6.8 billion barrels. And of course, after having, in 2008, those incredibly high oil prices, I think a lot were deciding, okay, I need to get out of my whatever kind of car. A lot of people were making decisions. I think that we're starting to see some of those decisions having effects as well in terms of consumption, people's practices there. But there's a lot of things that go into it, and I don't think you can really point to just one. But certainly it's interesting as you kind of look through this information, the reality that's there.
Certainly.
Robert?
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned earlier that the countries we're shipping gasoline to, refined gasoline to, is regional. One of the factors of that is it's cost effective because they're not shipping it. It's one thing to sell it to Canada or Ecuador, countries that are reasonably close to us, but it's a whole different story if you're trying to ship it on the other side of the world. The other interesting thing is, as we all know, Iran has very significant oil reserves. They have absolutely no refining capacity. To get their gasoline, they have to ship literally every drop of oil they may produce out into another country to have it refined into, gasoline or diesel for their own, and then shipped back in.
So they completely outsource their refining capability.
All of it, yeah.
You're not being a passive investor with regards to, I should say, you might identify some of your background so that friends here in the room, John works for the SEG, Society of Exploration and Geophysicists. So he has a real good understanding of all kinds of mixes of hydrocarbons, whether it be natural gas or oil. So thanks, John.
Yeah, but I might even add, one of my sources is my sister works in, she's a very good scientist. She is in algal biofuel research for ConocoPhillips. She told me something very interesting a couple of months ago, that, we talk about the Bakken and what a huge play that is long term. But she told me, of course, this is from her chemist and scientific background, one thing about the Bakken is the Bakken oil, for the most part, isn't very good for making diesel. And the real big international market for refined motor fuels is, of course, diesel. All about the type of oil it is. But long term, that has big implications. Most of the Bakken's not going to be very good for diesel.